Does anyone need to check their phone? How many minutes does it take before the anxiety to check your phone overwhelms you? We check our phone 150 times a day. But strangely, our phones have become far more dependent on us than we are on them, and not just for a recharge. Here's what's happening. We're participating in the greatest socioeconomic experiment in human history. It's called surveillance capitalism. This is the elephant in every room of our lives. Surveillance capitalism is the modern-day business model in which everything we do, morning, day, and night, is tracked, analyzed, and monetized. Google knows when you're pregnant. Facebook knows when you're on your period, and Fitbit knows when you're having sex. Our personal information is packaged into data sets, shared and sold in a hidden ecosystem of massive data companies.
Episode 12, Slaying the Surveillance Capitalist Pigs, with Mark Weinstein.
Welcome everyone to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. Kevin, I'm excited. We're getting there. This is now Season 3, Episode 1, dozen.
Yes.
So we're getting through this season in a nice clip. That's great. Here's the thing, guys. I'm going to tell you something again. We say this all the time. I feel like we're in a static kind of way of introducing every guest that they're special, and I don't want to downplay any of this, but I got to tell you, Kevin, I keep thinking, how are we going to add more spice and flavor and diversity into the conversations that we're having? And yet I believe we are doing it again tonight because this is something more unique than we have done before and coming on a different topic than we've done before, crossing many barriers around what we consider in one of the crown jewels in cybersecurity is privacy. And we're going to dive deep into that tonight. And we have an exquisite guest with us. And so I am excited. Are you excited, Kevin?
Dude, we keep saying it, like you said, every episode we've said it. And we keep going back to it. And we're like, how are we going to keep the momentum going with good guests and good topics? And then something like Mark falls in our laps and we're back riding the wave of awesomeness again. We're like, cool. Because when I saw your TED Talk, I was just like, dude, this is gold. This is a topic we need to cover. We got to talk about this. And dude, I could spend 15 minutes on your bio, but I'm going to let's just try to set the stage real quick here. So Mark, just in the press that Mark's been in it, we said TED Talk. He's got the TED Talk. In the press, Mark has been featured in Newsweek, LA Times, Fox News, The Hill, Wall Street Journal, News Nation, the New York Times, the Associated Press. Yes, I'm reading from a list because if I didn't have it, I would forget half of these. It's like, oh my gosh, CNN, Fox News, BBC, Business Insider, TechCrunch, The Hill, New York Post. Do I need to go on? I mean, because there were a lot more. I just grabbed the top ones that I saw. I'm like, oh my God, I've heard of all of them. Yes. And Mark is an author. And he wrote the book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework, which we will get into tonight. And I was going to stop there, but I got one more fun fact that I've got to hit on. Not only did Mark do all of that, and this is not even touching on the bio at all, this is just the news features. Mark is a privacy advocate. Jason, I know you can appreciate this because you're a huge privacy advocate.
Yeah.
He's not the inventor of one patent. He is the inventor of 10 privacy patents. So hopefully we can get into all of that with you, Mark. Again, we got a lot to cover, so I'm just going to keep it short. Welcome to the show, sir.
Kevin and Jason, my hat's off to both of you guys. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here together. We have a great conversation in front of us, and we're just going to jump right into it. The social media, privacy, this fact, and I just want to put this on the table, that, this country, we now are in this sort of hateful moment where we think we hate each other, and that is not true. We don't hate each other. The bots and trolls have incited us to hate each other, and we talk about privacy. We can't ignore that. We are Americans. Disagreement is the backbone of democracy. We're supposed to disagree. How boring if we didn't. And the beautiful thing in America is that you don't get in trouble for disagreeing. We could just disagree all day and then have a beer or, whatever it is, go for a swim or go play tennis, whatever it is, parent our kids together. So anyway, it's great to be here. We got a lot to talk about.
Boy, do we ever. So let's jump right into it. I want to start in your background, I guess, how you got started in social media, because that is your forte, that is your expertise, and there's a good reason for that. And I got to looking back at your history and everything about what you did related to social media, even back into the 90s when you had invented two of the very earliest social media networks, Super Family and Super Friends, they were called, correct?
That's right. They were PC Magazine top 100 sites back in the 90s.
In the 90s, yes.
People think that's like the dinosaur age, but, tech was there. We didn't have great ways, we had to engineer for, like phone lines to get up online. But, there was this new tech. And listen, for the 90s, just as a footnote of the 90s, everybody, email was already raging. And email already was terrible. Email one-dimensional. You can't really understand what people are saying. You misinterpret it all the time. And here we are still. Email is one of our most primary modes of communication, and it was ghastly 25 years ago.
Well, you grew these social networks to what, 20 million? I believe I read 20 million subscribers to these networks.
That would have been, listen, if I'd done that in the 90s, then, I would be, nobody did that in the 90s, but we grew them. I grew MeWe in the 2000s to 20 million subscribers.
MeWe. Okay. Yes.
That's what I do. But let's start it. We'll go to Web 1 quickly, because we want to distinguish for those of you who have either forgotten or aren't old enough to recall. There was an era called Web 1, and this is where social media was born. So, and the idea behind social media was really awesome, because there are, let's say, 100 entrepreneurs around the world, ideating at the same time and launching, these new, what were called community portals, to connect us, to enhance our lives, so we could stay connected to our family and our friends and find like-minded, people and hobbyists, around the world. And there wasn't anything called boosted content or, data stealing by companies and targeting and manipulation. There was none of that. So this was really like, you could think of Web 1 as like the golden era. And there were no like targeted ads or, any of that BS. So it was really, the idea, the invention of social media was really beautiful. And the entrepreneurs involved were just, doing great capitalism, which is about serving your customer, figuring out how to serve humanity, and then being able to make money doing that. So that's Web 1. It was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, because as you're saying that, I remember a lot of that time and thinking about the fundamental aspects of technology and how we were all applying that and trying to turn it into something. In fact, I just had this conversation the other day about comparisons to AI and some of the things that we're doing with AI in the interface of how we interface with it. And I'm getting frustrated because I'm saying, kind of synonymous to your statement about email, I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, this is archaic. Having a chat client that I'm typing stuff in and then it sends me words that I have to read back feels archaic. It feels like nothing more than a bulletin board system back in the 80s and early 90s that I used to get on and type into and chat back and forth with. And I know that those interfaces are going to become more. So it feels like we go through these same rhythms in technology where we come up with something super amazing, but how we start to implement it is slow and methodical until we eventually gets to something that we're like, wow, look at all the value that we're getting out of it today. And then the second part.
Yeah. Jason, here's what's interesting about what you just said. And for, everybody who's watching this or listening, you could argue that when surveillance capitalism arose, which was Web 2 in the, early 2000s, and then, the 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that at first it seemed, it was clunky, and then it seemed helpful to a lot of people. It's like, oh, you know that I need dog food, and there's an ad for the Purina that I get in the store. Right
shocker.
What's that? This thing knows me. And then, of course, it quickly turned creepy. Now, AI is sort of running the same way, but it's much more insidious because AI isn't just an algorithm. AI is a learning algorithm that is massive in its ability to very rapidly, get inside your head and anticipate your thoughts before you think them. So this is the creep factor is just going to come very fast. And the idea of how do we, AI is fascinating. We can do a whole show on AI, of course, and just scratch the surface. But, I've written about it. I've been interviewed on Fox about it. I had an op-ed on Fox about how we regulate it. And right now, just to get started, AI is good and AI is kind of like, terrifying, especially, guys. So if any of our listeners have kids, and for everybody watching, we're going to jump around a little bit because there's so many tangents here. If you have a kid, just say this, don't get your kid any kind of stuffy that has like a little AI friend in it, because that means you're connecting every conversation that your kid is having to the web. And this is really a data bot that is really smart, that is learning your kid and is interacting with your kid and making friends with your kid. And all that data is just being fed right up to the data ecosystem, coming back this whole idea around privacy. AI is terrifying when you start to think about the privacy infraction implications.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to talk more about that later in our second segment because I'm interested in getting into that. I do a lot today in my day job. That is my responsibility now. Other than my cybersecurity stuff, I also lead AI initiatives for a publicly traded company, and how do we do that in a secure way? So that's a very, very, very good topic, and you made some very good points there that we want to dive into. Let's take a step back, though, and I want to talk a little bit back on something Kevin said earlier that I don't think we can skip past, because he stated this, and I think it's important. He stated that you have 10 patents. And Mark, I have one. And I know what it took to get that one patent. And mine's in EDI, supply chain transactions. But 10 patents? I mean, tell us a little bit about, your privacy patents and what did you go through to really start to, get yourself aligned with 10 of them, much less one?
And this, obviously we're moving around because this is Web 2. And then we'll give our listeners a timeline, from Web 1 to Web 2 and to this IP. So first of all, guys, a little correction. It's now 11, but, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
And the 12th, the application for the 12th was just filed 2 days ago.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. In 2012, which is now, 12 years ago, the day before Facebook went public, I was interviewed on Fox because they were looking for somebody who would say something not nice about Facebook. And I got on Fox and I said, look, guys, they've got this privacy thing wrong. It's creepy when I tell a friend of mine that I got to hit the store and get some dog food, and I have an ad, in my face 10 seconds later. This is a private conversation, and they're reading it. They know everything about me now. They know what I'm thinking. They know what I'm doing. They know what I need to do. They know I have a dog. They know, all this stuff. And I said on Fox, I said, they've got this wrong. and privacy is going to come back. Now, luckily, I say this tongue in cheek, I didn't tell them how long it was going to take for people to sort of get really worried. I mean, to me, it was so obvious that this was creepy and a huge infraction. But I had also noticed that, and I'll tie this to the IP in a second, but 2 years earlier, 2010, is when it first really hit me, was when Mark Zuckerberg was at the Crunchies, and he was being interviewed in 2010, and he said, privacy is a social norm of the past. That's what the headlines were the next day. And I was watching, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, I could actually draw. There is this expression, your jaw drops.
Yeah.
It's real. You see something or hear something so incredulous, and you can't close your mouth. You're like,
he used the words social norm of the past.
Social norm of the past.
Yeah, I remember
Wow.
that.
And I was like, whoa, because I was in between. I'd been in Web 1, and Web 1 imploded because we were all doing the right thing, getting users. And that was what investors wanted. There was not a revenue model for Web 1. The revenue model was called the new economy. Everybody was focused on getting users. We called them eyeballs back then, getting eyeballs. And that's how we became a PC Magazine top 100 few sites, because we had great traction. So, but then it became surveillance capitalism. Now, in 2012, when I did that interview, we had already filed the first patent application, bring this back to the IP. And I'd say we, because I assigned these to, the company that I had, the next company I started, which was MeWe, which is, Scruples Incorporated is the corporation. And so I had already filed a patent application on behalf of the corporation on how we could have anonymous and personalized ads without all this creepy, targeted BS, and without anybody stealing my data and putting it into a huge data ecosystem and sharing with every marketer and advertiser and every adversarial entity in the world. So, that's the essence of this patent portfolio. And no one was doing it. The prior art searches still today turn up nothing that interferes with, my portfolio, which is assigned, as I said, to MeWe. But this is what it's about. It's about, look, the reality is that, we need advertising. A lot of sites are dependent on it for their revenue model. But the other reality is that it's not a stretch to figure out how to do this properly. And in fact, a lot of companies subsequently, as we move into my, 12th application and 11 patents issued, there are many companies, social media, telecom, all kinds of companies that today are in violation of this IP, and we haven't started to enforce it yet. And we expect to in the future, for sure. So that's really, I was like, but on Fox, I wasn't about to tip my cap there, but I'm like, but it doesn't have to be this way. And all these guys are getting patents on how to steal your data. And I'm like, guys, we've got to invent a different and better way. This is real. We've got to invent it. And so, anyway, that's what it's about. So there's your answer, Jason.
Well, Mark, I want to talk about the TED Talk. I got to listening to the TED Talk, and I've got to say, man, I was really impressed. Everything you were saying made a lot of sense to me, because as you were going through your talk, the thing that kept coming back to me was when I watched the Netflix's Social Dilemma. Oh. And I'm like, okay, everything that they were warning us about in that documentary, or whatever you want to call it, it is exactly what you're telling us is going on. And to say one of the quotes in your TED Talk that I remember that stuck out to me was, "We are participating in the greatest socioeconomic experiment in human history." And you mentioned this earlier. It's called surveillance capitalism. So, if you don't mind, if you had to summarize the TED Talk in a few paragraphs, how would you tell somebody that's never seen it what the message is? Because it's an impressive message.
Number one, first of all, just for our listeners, it's a 9-minute TED Talk on purpose so that you can, because we live in such a busy state of mind. You grab, 9 minutes, grab a cup of coffee or, whatever suits your fancy and just find it. The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, Mark Weinstein. And it's actually, we took a long time, my assistant and I, working on that so that I could get the messaging just perfect, because I wanted to do it in a very compact way for people. And the message is really simple, is that, privacy, we're living in this era in the world where privacy is nearly dead and where everything you do is tracked and everything, even the news you read, if, half of you are on Facebook, remember half of the Facebook users get their news on Facebook, and Facebook's deciding what news you see, just like ads, everybody's filtering their slant for you. But the message is clear. This is unprecedented in human history, and our forefathers who fought, in the Revolutionary War, that was about, really privacy, getting the British out of our houses. World War I, World War II. This great idea about democracy and freedom. And this leads to a very important conversation. Privacy is really a human right. And surveillance capitalism, which was invented, along, the web, not by the web inventor, but along with the social media companies and Google, as a way for them to get huge amounts of data and then sell that to the advertisers, marketers, and political operatives who want to target and manipulate your purchase decisions and your thoughts and your votes. So
definitely your votes.
yeah, and that's the era that we're in. And so this is where, the book, you guys talked about it, we'll talk about it at some point, but Restoring Our Sanity Online, Revolutionary Social Framework really discusses how we can reset and get it right so that we can have our own thoughts, have critical thinking, have civil discourse, and so that our kids can get their mental health back.
Well, and the points you're making are valid too. I think there's a couple of things I want to highlight in what you were just saying, so we don't skate over these important issues. Because I have a lot of conversations with people about those same topics from a security background. Keeping your information safe as an individual, what can you do to keep your information safe? Because it starts with you and the choices you make. But you just said something that I thought was very provocative. And I want to make sure people capture this, that your activities online are driving the information that you're going to continue to receive online. That's the information you're going to be getting. So a good example of this is if sensational conversations or sensational type of news or topics are the things that grab your attention and you continue to go to those things, you will continue to get more of that. And what is your news begin? Your information that you're taking into your mind is all going to be of a certain type. The diversification of information that you're getting will be reduced. And so yet you will come to the place where we are today in America and across the world, where we all have these very, very, very strong, compelling points of views based on the information we've been receiving over and over and over again, because we don't quite have enough diversification in the information we're receiving. We're seeing one way.
Strategic divisiveness.
Yeah, yes. But now hold on, Jason, because it's even more dramatic. for everybody, okay? Because AI, which is now running the analytical algorithms, which, historically, Facebook employed thousands of psychologists and data analysts who work together to figure out exactly how to manipulate the human mind and then just anticipate your thoughts before you think them. But AI, you guys are familiar with the old phrase called A/B testing, where you would test the response of a user by trying this and then that. AI does this in nanoseconds. So you might have thought that you had an appetite for outrageous content, but AI is testing you every second. And this is why it's not only our kids who are addicted to news feeds. I interviewed with, another outlet the other day, and the interviewer was saying his dad is completely addicted to Twitter. Now, why? How? That's the AI and the algorithm now. This stuff is so smart, it's just going to hook you, and you might not have been interested in outrageous content or entertain, whatever it is, but it's just grabbing and hooking you, because remember, the whole objective is to keep you on as long as possible, to serve as many ads to you as possible, to get you to make purchase decisions, all this stuff. And the AI is just learning you instantaneously, and then it's got you, and then all that data is going on. Now, remember, you're being tracked whether you're logged into Facebook or not. Okay, for example, Meta is tracking you whether you're logged in or not. The Wall Street Journal uncovered this almost a decade ago. It hasn't changed. Okay, so, if you think, but, I'll log out. No, sorry, too late, game over. And also the Cambridge Analytica scandal, in 2018. So we're adults, 220 million Americans, all of our data, from Facebook was basically through, a weak link in their system, was stolen by Cambridge Analytica. It's now available on the dark web. It's available everywhere. And this leads to another premise because, the idea now for everybody paying attention, privacy is not dead. We're going to get to that. Okay. But it's in pretty bad shape right now. But the adventure web and guys like me are cracking the nut on how we're going to fix this. And we'll talk about that. It's in my book. Tim's done some things. Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, was a friend of mine who's been an advisor for over a decade. There's stuff now. It's all coming online. We're going to fix this.
So Mark, I got a two-part question, and we're going to try to cover this in 5 minutes. So, yeah, we've talked about a lot of the negativity associated with being surveilled and tracked. There is this struggle between capitalism, and in order to capitalize on this data, which we've been doing for a long time, they have to collect your information. So organizations are not going to want to relinquish that capital. At the same time, as you said, privacy is important to us. So is there a middle ground here beyond the negatives where there's some positives in some of this?
Well, that's what I was really suggesting. There's a lot of positives. Now, look, the web moves fast, right? So Web 1 was this sort of the idealism of, all this new technology, all this new communication technology, and putting it to good use. Then Web 2 came around. Well, here's how we're going to monetize, with this surveillance capitalism ad model and data grabbing. And then, you see how destructive it can be because, look at China, and the TED Talk talks about, you can start to get these social scores. And if you're watching too many videos, your kids are, et cetera, you get penalized. You can't get a good job. Your kids won't get into the right schools, all that stuff. So, all this data is really, there's a problem. Now, the free market, this is where we will ultimately get to, Jason, is the free market. Because what happens, and my new book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, has a fascinating chapter on the parallels of big energy, big ag, and big tech, and how they start out with this sort of altruism, pure capitalism. Remember, capitalism is a great system. You serve people and you give them what they love, and it's called doing well by doing good.
Yeah.
So it really works perfectly. But when you take, when the companies, the early companies, then all of a sudden, they start to take market share, and not always, but what happens is in these instances, the big energy companies become very well funded, and then they box out the little guys, and then they buy them or put them out of business. Same thing in, big ag, big energy, big tech. Look at Google, just found guilty of antitrust violations, boxing out all their competitors, locking down the major, search market with deals that nobody can come in on, and then they serve their own products. It's a mess. So one of the things that we have to get back to is free market capitalism. This is actually what our economic system is based on in the United States. And this is why, thank goodness, we do need the government, whether, you're a supporter or not. Remember, the government has a function, just like we need our roads maintained, and we need the fire department, and we need the police department. We also need the monopoly watchdog department, the Federal Trade Commission. We need them saying, whoa, guys, this is out of hand. Sorry. And we've got to get the free market back. That's a piece of it. It's very important because, with social media, personal social media, there's no free market right now. Why do you think, aside from MeWe, which I started, and which launched in 2016, and Snap, which became a personal social network, according to the Federal Trade Commission, there are no other ones in the world. Twitter's not a personal social network. It's a social network. TikTok, no way. Personal social networking has collapsed. There's no free market. There's no alternative to the, cowboy capitalism of surveillance capitalism, which is, actually dangerous for all of us.
You hit on something there, Mark, that made me think of another question I want to ask before we go to a break, and it's related to TikTok. We heard for a while here that TikTok was possibly going to get banned. It may still get banned. I don't know. But the developers of TikTok could have possibly been looking to use this social network against us as a nation state. And I want to know, in your opinion, is there anything to that? And if they are, what are they really trying to get by spying on the Americans, so to speak? What's it all about?
Well, Kevin, you asked the right guy.
I know I did. That's why I asked you.
In 2022, I had a major op-ed in Newsweek where I said we've got to ban TikTok right now. In 2024, in April, right before the House and the Senate, legislated that TikTok needs to be sold to an American owner with no server connections to China, I had an op-ed in The Hill, a very important outlet for, that's read by congressional bodies and staffers, et cetera, saying the same thing. Here's the issue. TikTok is a Chinese company.
Right.
They have a version in China, for example, and kids are allowed on it 40 minutes a day only. That's the cap. And, most of the kids that are on it, when you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They want to be, an astronaut, an engineer, things like that. The version that TikTok, the Chinese company, that's connected to the Chinese government by mandate by the Chinese government, whose data is collected and overseen by the Chinese government, even, the data collects from Americans. So all of our kids, biometrics, all of our kids' data, because kids, there's 100 million Americans, on TikTok, or 100 million kids. I forget what the number is. The numbers are massive.
Not me.
The numbers are massive. And here's, if anybody out there, if you have a kid who's just turned 13 or 12, or who's just got on TikTok for the first time, just take a look at the news feed that TikTok builds for them. And you tell me if this is a good thing. You tell me if all this stuff about, violence and sexuality and, and then, teaching them to want to be social media stars, thinking that that's the career path. You tell me if TikTok is serving our youth, or if TikTok is actually discreetly attempting to undermine our democracy. Also, take a look at the propaganda about China and what you can't find on TikTok about, the realities of China, Tiananmen Square, things like that. There's a massive amount of propaganda all the time, through TikTok. So, yes. And look, there are also a lot of Americans who make their living on TikTok. So we have a big problem, right? Because we have Americans who are served by TikTok, they're making their living. But, TikTok, you could argue, and I would disagree, that Instagram is also kind of like, a bit messy, right? A bit would be an understatement. Can be, we have American apps that, certainly, and Snap is very addictive to our kids. And, it's all about how long can I keep you on in these streaks and the mental health hazards of these Facebook, Instagram, Snap, TikTok. But I think the government's right. We've got to put TikTok into American ownership, the American division of TikTok with no server connection back to the motherland, which is China, an adversarial, entity. Or we just need to ban it. We've got to, because we've got to be smarter about preserving our civil discourse, our kids, and our, everything.
Yeah,
so
Mark,
I got to ask one last question. And, sorry, Jason, I just need to know, because I know you have some insight on this. Can we ban it? Will it be banned? Will we ever do anything about it? Or is it all just talk?
Well, listen, again, this is because of our democratic processes, democracy works a little bit slower, right? And so TikTok, so the government, did mandate through legislation that TikTok be sold. They gave it a time frame. Now, there's a case. TikTok is challenging the constitutionality of, this mandate by the federal government. And now that's got to work its way through the courts. There are certainly suitors, and so, we've got it. We now have to watch this play out a little bit. But guys, look, if you look at my Newsweek article, for anybody, watching, listening, just find it. Find the Newsweek piece I wrote on TikTok, Mark Weinstein. I research everything. My book has over 400 footnotes in it from credible sources. So, I don't just, when you hear me say something, it's backed up. And it's not backed up by the dark web. It's backed up by credible, sources, Pew everybody. So, I don't mess around. And that's why when you read that list of who publishes me, and also around the world, who interviews me, and that's why. And also because, it's not the right or the left, because you can see all the outlets will interview me. And we all love the conversations because it's common sense. When I talk about it's common sense, there's no, and that's what's happening. We've got to, do something about TikTok. Kevin, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes. I mean, it definitely does. I mean, and certainly looking at the people that have interviewed you on not just that, but on many aspects of privacy, it's obvious to me that you can back it up. And I'm going to encourage, and we're going to put tons of links in the description of this video for people to go do your own research. But
Kevin, I got to tell you, he sounded a lot like me there at the end with he was saying that, and he just said it differently. My terminology is the only thing that flies past these teeth is truth. Because I only speak it is knowledge. Yeah, but it's only because it's based on evidence, facts, things that are real. Otherwise, it's not worth saying. So I really appreciate that. With that, guys, let's get to break and let's come back and jump into the second segment.
Yeah, let's do it.
Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework, is authored by Mark Weinstein, a tech entrepreneur and privacy expert recognized as one of the visionary inventors of social networking. In this book, Weinstein critically examines the current state of social media, highlighting its detrimental effects on mental health, privacy, and civil discourse. He proposes a transformative framework aimed at reshaping online platforms to prioritize user empowerment, authenticity, and well-being. The book delves into topics such as the impact of surveillance capitalism, the role of artificial intelligence in social interactions, and the necessity of protecting children from harmful online content. Weinstein advocates for a shift towards a more human-centered digital environment that fosters critical thinking and democratic values.
Do zero-day exploits and supply chain attacks keep you up at night? Worry no more. You can harden your security with ThreatLocker. Imagine taking a proactive, deny-by-default approach to cybersecurity, blocking every action, process, and user unless specifically authorized by your team. ThreatLocker helps you do this and provides a full audit of every action, allowed or blocked, for risk management and compliance. Onboarding and operation is fully supported by their US-based support team. Stop the exploitation of trusted applications within your organization to keep you running efficiently and secure, protected from ransomware. Worldwide, companies like JetBlue trust ThreatLocker to secure their data and keep their business operations flying high. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can mitigate unknown threats and ensure compliance for your organization, visit threatlocker.com.
One of the most significant and pervasive cybersecurity scams leveraging social media is phishing and social engineering attacks, particularly spear phishing and catfishing. These scams exploit the trust and personal information users share on social media platforms, often leading to devastating financial, personal, and professional consequences. How does it work? Attackers browse public profiles to learn about the target's job, friends, hobbies, and interests. They craft messages pretending to be a friend, colleague, or legitimate entity. For example, your boss or a vendor. Links or attachments in these messages lead to malware, credential theft, or fake websites.
Welcome back, everyone. And we're having a lot of fun in this conversation. We've already covered some really important things that I'm sure people's heads are spinning on, and they're probably feeling all sorts of things on. I'm not quite sure what to do, but I do know I need to go get Mark's book because there's probably some really cool things in there that I can learn. But let's get a little deeper in here. Mark, we started talking a little bit about AI and LLMs and that association to your privacy and how much worse it is as a result. And people just don't quite get that yet. One of the things that, from my position, as we start talking about as a cybersecurity professional, how we start to embrace this new disruptive technology in a very secured way. Kevin and I have done several conversations around this and presentations around this, both the convergence of cybersecurity and AI. And one of the things we make sure that we're trying to explain to people is a couple of points you've made already. One, in Web 1, when we started to converge into Web 2 and Web 2 launched, our data started trickling away from us. It was being collected and it was being used, and we lost control of it at some point. One of the things we are really concerned about is not further losing control of our data and our privacy as we get deeper into the uses of AI. Because, like with anything, a new technology comes online, we get enamored by it, we just start using it and going crazy and doing all this really fun, cool stuff and just giving all of our information away. And then a year or two later, we realize we've just given away way more of ourselves than we ever should have. So if we can start off early with the right protections and guidance and awareness, could we do a better job with this technology than we've done with others? And so I'd like to get your thought a little bit on that as we get deeper into this conversation.
Well, there's a lot there. And, we're in the era of AI. That's, there's no turning back, right? And AI can also be the good guy, because, AI can be one of the tools that we use, better than the tools that we've historically used to identify what is a bot or a troll and what is an identifiable human being. So when we start to look at the battle between, bots and trolls and human beings, right? And there's a lot there in this world of artificial intelligence that we are just learning how to master. And, one of the issues we want to just give the sort of holistic perspective. Tim Berners-Lee invented the web in 1989. Now, think about that, everybody. That's, 30 something years ago, right? That's nothing. So, it took, a few hundred years to sort out, truth and fiction when the printing press was invented. And so, but tech moves so much faster than anything in history, which makes it, really exciting and fascinating. So, there is hope for how we're going to manage this, but there are just a lot of pieces to this puzzle. Now, one of the things that I want to put on the table for us, because it's really interesting, and as one of the world's leading privacy advocates, this is a really important conversation for us to have. And this is, everybody just get ready for it. This is user ID verification. Now, I'm one of the leading privacy guys in the world, and I think it's time for us to admit, which I've been unwilling to admit for a long time, but to admit that they already know who we are.
Yeah, we've said that one before, right, Jason?
Yeah, we've been on stage saying, look, if you're worried about your data, it's already out there. They already know everything about you.
Look, we're born with Social Security numbers, but now it's all electronic, right? So if we can collectively, on all sides of the aisle, just admit, and here's what we're going to admit. We're going to admit that our anonymity is over, not privacy. And I have a chapter in the book that talks about this gladiator battle between privacy and anonymity. But we've got to give up anonymity in order to save our privacy. So we've got to give up this idea that we're anonymous, because the only thing, because it's not a human being, the only thing that's anonymous is a bot or a troll. Otherwise, the government, Meta, Google, the dark web, the advertisers and marketers, the data ecosystem, the credit card companies, they all know who we are already. So let's stop pretending that we're anonymous, and then let's take our privacy back, because that's the backbone of democracy. It's not anonymity. It's privacy. It's privacy in your home. It's the privacy of your data. It's the privacy for law-abiding citizens. And we can do this. We throw in the towel on anonymity, and then we get a good user right. Look, financial services companies already have it. There are good user ID vendors and systems that are out there, and now we've got to protect our kids. So this is how we solve the mental health crisis. First of all, because then we won't have 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds on Meta and on TikTok and becoming addicted and getting their brains poisoned. We start there. Then we kill all of the boosted content in any way to get into their news feeds, and we make sure that a 13-year-old is talking to a real other 13-year-old that they choose to be connected to, not a 50-year-old creep, not a bot or a troll that's manipulating their thoughts and making them think that social media star is a huge avenue. Listen, some kids are great at that. That's lovely. But this is classic. There's not enough room, in the system for everybody wanting to be a social media star. Just like there is enough room for all the kids whose parents want them to be professional athletes. We got to be smart about this. But we give up. Yeah,
you're bringing up a good point that I want to elaborate on a little bit, because it reminded me of a news article I just saw 2 days ago. There's and I'm not sure how I feel about it, other than as a technologist. The technologist in me, what his immediate thought was, that's a very innovative implementation I've not seen before. But what it is there's a startup company that just launched that is trying to build a humanism detector, which basically is saying the bots and trolls are doing all this work behind the scenes, and there's no way for a machine or a UI to detect if that's truly AI or if that's a real human. So what they've done is they've created a device that'll scan your retina, store that data in blockchain, and then when you're on a system and it needs to detect if you are truly human, then it can take a picture of your retina, align it with the blockchain, say, yep, this is validated as a real person. The implications from that, though, there's always good and bad, right?
You got to keep your camera on.
Yeah, well, and the other, I know some of the good things are, to your point, if you are a 16-year-old kid and you're trying to communicate with other 16-year-olds, the identity of those other people will be valid as a human of a certain age. Now, I don't agree with that either, because the flip side of that is you're giving away a lot of your personal information in order to gain that level of privacy. But it is that gladiator battle that you were referring to of anonymity and privacy going hand in hand. And I don't know where it's going to end up at, but I just thought that was kind of a fascinating take of what's happening today that could go either way as well.
Well, that's first of all, when you talked about TikTok in the last segment, what TikTok is getting, what the Chinese government is getting right now, and this is well documented, are the biometrics. Everybody, a scan of your eye is a biometric, just like, a thumbprint, etc. So these are called biometrics, and once they're out there, they're out there. Now, what that company is doing, and then it becomes cat and mouse. So listen, we're going to go through an era of cat and mouse, good AI, bad AI, an AI system, because, of course, there are lots of companies that have been running over the years that their job is to keep the bad actors out of a social media platform, out of a financial services platform. You guys know this. You deploy this kind of tech all the time. So, and now these algorithms are so smart. Now they're AI. But, of course, the battle of good and bad AI is really fascinating, too, because it happens in nanoseconds. And it's like, where does it all end? And then the idea of you'll upload your biometric, but then a really smart bad AI system is somehow going to be able to mimic that. This is going to go on for a while until we really sort it out. But there are going to be ways, and it's not hard. As we said, financial services do it already. And we are going to have to do something like this. And that's a fascinating startup, because that's where there's an opening for the free market. It's like privacy protecting, but verifying, human verification, so that we know, Now here's the other piece, though, that I want to add to what I talk about in the book, is pseudonyms are welcome and allowed. So you don't have to use your real name. That's not the point. The point is, if you're a bad actor on a platform, a site, or, if you're breaking the law or doing something that violates the terms and conditions of a platform or the law, that your real identity is known to the operator. But you could be, you could still have a pseudonym. We want to make sure you have that level of privacy. You see, that's privacy. So you can still have that, because people enjoy that. And after all, if you're you guys, or you're me, maybe I don't want everybody to know everywhere that I am that this is Mark Weinstein. No, I want to, right. But
I like that you brought that up, Mark, because one of our guests goes by a pseudonym, goes by a fake name, and is a huge privacy advocate. And the host of another podcast you may have heard of called The Darknet Diaries. He goes by Jack Resider, which we all know is not really his name. And he's almost always masked. You don't see his face. You just hear his voice. But he's become pretty famous for what he does, talking about dark web stories. But he talked to us about trying to restore your privacy. He had a long story. I encourage people to go listen to that episode, because he tells a story about why he decided to be anonymous. And it's incredible. It's scary. But basically, some crazy fan tracked him down and decided they were going to basically invade his spare. I don't know if they were trying to prove that they could find him or what it was all about. But the point is, he talked to us about some books that are out there and some things out there about restoring your privacy. And I've even seen some things about becoming invisible online. I don't know if this is possible in today's world, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because there are a lot of people that do believe you can pretty much go off grid and become invisible even after you've given up all of your information online. What do you think to that?
Well, Kevin, I actually, excuse me, I would agree. And that's the point. And this is the point for our, everybody who's watching and listening. Just because our stuff is all out there, and just because AI, an AI search by a future employer, a future boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, this is actually the problem for our kids and for future generations, and also their ability to critical think. But even for us, right now, if, we actually just took ourselves off the grid, so to speak, if you just deep sixed, and had a VPN and, used Signal, don't use WhatsApp, everybody, because Facebook tracks you everywhere. And they say in there, what about this?
If you take one thing away, guys.
Sorry, use Signal. Use Telegram. Use Signal. I think Signal's the best choice.
Yeah.
And get your VPN and use Signal and just get off the web. You can stop the data collection and make sure no one's uploading your picture, because the biometrics of your face are already known. Facebook, this whole sort of, Face ID and all that stuff. They're already, your face is already out there and recognizable. So you can do it. You can stop almost 100% of data collection on you. Now, also, here's a strange thing. If you're driving a General Motors car, you want to go into the software online and make sure that you change the settings so the car is not collecting data on you, because this was in the news several months ago. That General Motors, is actually collecting your data and sharing it willingly with insurance companies. Yeah. So they know your driving behavior. They know where you're breaking the law. They know all this stuff.
They're not going to like my driving behavior. I'm screwed then when it comes to getting my insurance renewed, I guess.
And then, you can get into your phone, Apple or Android, whatever if you're taking pictures, you can turn off the metadata so that it's not stamping your photos with any information.
Yeah.
So the answer is you can take a lot of steps right now to stop it. And if you have kids, just listen, here's what's really happening and Apple is also really helping with this. It's text, it's chat threads and texting. You can do this with your friends, with the families that your kids are playing softball with or whatever, and you can just stay off Facebook and, all those sites. You can just stay off totally and keep your kids off of them. So when it's time for them to get a new boyfriend, girlfriend, job, and they're 25 years old, and AI is so sophisticated, it's going to grab everything possible, that there's going to be very little to grab. So they can be their own person and represent who they are, just like we've always been able to, because we're a little bit older. So
I have an interesting story for you with that just happened last night. And I want to add this in, and then I want to ask you another question. So I attended a talk last night by one of the sharks from Shark Tank, and he explicitly was talking about that. And it was at a college here, and he was saying, look, you guys need to know something. Don't put all of your stupid stuff that you do all the time on social media. Everything you're doing on social media, it's out there for everybody to know. And guess what? People like me who you want to invest in you, I have a piece of software that before I'm going to invest in you, I do an extensive search on all your social media and learn everything I want to know about you. And I even put certain keywords that I look for as attributes or deterrents. And if those are flagged, I'm not having a conversation with you. And it was that direct that this is how your information is being used. If you ever wondered before, you don't have to wonder anymore. This is happening. So if you're not getting the job, he's like, you won't even know why you didn't get the job, why I didn't select you. Because I've just done my research.
Right? Yeah, you won't even know why. But and with AI, you know, all you have to do is tell the AI, give me every piece of information that's out there on so and so, everything. And the dossier, remember, listen, a few years ago there was a reporter for The Guardian who asked Meta to give him all the data that they had on him, because you can actually request that. You know what he got as a human being? It wasn't that he was a reporter. They just like the data as a user, 60,000 pages.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, electronic, it's easy to store, but that's the point, everybody. You're just not, we're not paying attention. We're asleep at the wheel. And then you have no idea why. And this is going to be future relationships. This is going to be future jobs. And absolutely, you're going to program that AI, and listen, this is a big deal. But the answer, coming back to it, is yes, we can take it back. Now, and Tim Berners-Lee has this thing called pods, because remember, one of the ways we can take it back is to start to masterfully control our data. And we got to pull our data off of the centralized server system of Web 2 and down into what Tim and his Solid team has invented. They're called Solid. These are called Solid pods. Because what's coming is data portability, data interoperability. Because what's happened is, in the monopolization of it all, it's called the network effect. Why can't we get 500 million users? The last social network that I started, they're moving into Web3, by the way, and I'm not part of that team anymore. But it's the network effect, and then the massive, purposeful, intentional, malicious interference by, the elephant in the room, Meta, Facebook, who purposefully interferes. I mean, even Snap had a huge dossier. I think they called it the Voldemort dossier on how Facebook hugely interfered with them. And of course, Facebook put virtually all their competitors out of business or bought them, except for Snap and MeWe, which still function. But, the point is that we can stop it now. We can fix it. And Tim Berners-Lee has something called pods. So our data, and this is where we need the government, because the government has a case against Meta. I've been deposed. I've testified. I've issued declarative statements. I've provided them with hundreds of pages of documentation on Meta's interference with MeWe. But eventually, and I think for the next couple of years, we're going to get data portability. And therefore, what's missing right now is you can't download your data from Meta and then upload it anywhere else because it's a mess. You can download it. You can say, Facebook, give me my data. Right? Eventually, they will give you a massive packet, in a way that can't be uploaded of your data. So what we need is this data portability where our data is in our pod, where we can download it back and it immediately sorts in our pod. It's our stuff. Where there is no access for advertisers, marketers, political operatives to our data, whether it's up there or down in our pod. And then we can move it. The free market works. Then we can move it to a site that is aligned with our integrity, with what we believe in, with who we want to support. This is what's coming.
That reminds me. I was just going to say that reminds me of the right to be forgotten with GDPR. That's exactly what that sounds like.
That's what it reminded me of too. I was going to tell you, Mark, I think, I wish we had even more time to go into some of these conversations because they're so fascinating and where this is all going. But we're going to wind down our time here, and I want to save a little time to talk about your book. And I want to highlight a couple of things. So, yes, this is true. You have a quote from Steve Wozniak, the Apple co-founder. And he actually said this about your book. He said, "This is a must-read for anyone concerned with where we are today and looking for a better path forward." That was a pretty fascinating statement to be made by Steve. he goes on to write in forward, which is also, great. I mean, it's huge. It says, big tech is driving us, our kids, our society mad. In the nick of time, Restoring Our Sanity Online presents the bold, revolutionary framework for an epic reboot. So what would social media look like if it flourished, if it nourished our critical thinking, mental health, privacy, civil discourse, and democracy? Is that even possible? Talk to us a little bit about that, and what's your advice going forward that could help us get closer to that vision?
The answer is, as was said, it's possible. You got to read this book. And also, as Sir Tim Berners-Lee, lesser known, but truly the father, the sole inventor of the web is Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who also said, this is a vital read. This is a must read. It completely aligns with my vision for the future. So, it's there. It's possible. It takes all of us to stop feeling like we lost or like we're overwhelmed or like we have no power. Remember, democracy works and, our whole society works because of the American ethos, the American spirit, the fact that we as individuals are powerful and we can cause movements together. So, and what monopolies like to do is have us forget that we have any power. So, when we come back to that conversation about big ag, big energy, what we saw and what we see still there are movements. There are movements afoot, and they're not starting from the inside. These large monopolies will start to adopt, but, the organic farming, the biodynamic, food raising, all these great ideas start from the outside, start from entrepreneurs. Look at Musk. Musk is a fascinating human being, but let's just talk about him as an entrepreneur. Because as an entrepreneur, he's a genius. I mean, look what he did with Tesla, and that's an outsider. Granted, he was well-funded because he made some money at PayPal, et cetera. But this is the same thing that we can look forward to in social media and restoration networking. And there's a whole recipe for it in the book about how we do it, which is why Woz and Tim say, you got to read this book. Now, also guys like, my friend Kelly Slater, the world's famous world champion surfer. Kelly has a great endorsement of this book. Marshall Goldsmith, with his great, coach, Jack Canfield, another, brilliant, leader and coach. Raj Sisodia, the founder of the conscious capitalism movement. And they're great companies, Patagonia and Southwest and Whole Foods and, the Container Store. The list goes on and on. Companies that do well by doing good. And the data shows, as Raj is happy to point out in his lectures, that, companies that are really focused on serving the user do better. Now, here's the caveat. Here's the asterisk. In social media, we're not the customer. We're the product that's sold to the customer.
Yeah.
Is the advertiser and marketer. And to answer the other question, the obvious question, yes, it is totally possible, and it works for us to become the customer, again, that's served, rather than the product that's sold. We don't need surveillance capitalism to have the system work. We don't need surveillance capitalism to have advertising work. I've got 11 patents proving showing exactly how it does work, and you've seen this with companies going to, different kind of privacy settings that they didn't have before. Over the last several years, you've seen more adoption of different kinds of ad choices and these things that are all, in their own slice, violating, the IP that I've worked very hard on, but that's all right. That's good. And, we'll take care of those guys later and then hopefully help them get it right. So, look, it's a fascinating world. And the answer is, remember we said earlier, look, Facebook started 20 years ago. This is a baby, and you fast forward to the company's last 50 years, for the most part, no. They last 100 years. 9 out of 10 don't. So this industry, now we have this AI movement, right? This AI revolution, but this is all part of, the growth and maturity of a fascinating, world, the fascinating world of rapidly evolving tech that our white-haired guys and men and women in Washington are trying to get their arms around, and money gets in the way. Remember, money gets in the way. Meta has thousands of lobbyists. The fact that the courts found Google guilty of antitrust is a huge win for the government because Google has way more money than them to fight.
Yeah.
So this is, there you go.
Well, Mark, to keep us on time here and respect your time, we're going to start to close this out. I got to tell you, this has been an enjoyable conversation. So, Kevin, why don't you start working us out of this one?
Yeah, man, for sure. Mark, I feel like we've taken a quick master class in privacy and really what's going on in the real world. I think most of us are aware that a lot of this is happening, maybe not to the degree, but I highly encourage listeners to go out, pick up this book. Definitely start off by watching Mark's TED Talk. It's 9 minutes of awesomeness. And then just go do your research on his website. I read several things on his website last night that my mouth was open when I was reading it.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to feel that and understand a little bit more about some of the skins on the wall that Mark has so you could appreciate why you need to go out and buy the book. But Mark, I guess we'll leave it with this. If the listeners are interested to try to find you, where can they find you online? How can they get more information about you and everything else? We're going to link the TED Talk to the description.
Great. Thank you, guys. Restoring Our Sanity Online. By the way, it's entertaining. So you want to have a good read, right? You don't want to be depressed. You want to have a good read. And then you want to have some great laughs about, this industry. I mean, there are hilarious stories in here because I've been in the trenches for, over 25 years. So, you can get that Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. And thank you, everybody. It's also available, of course, on Kindle. And then pop a review for me, please. The more 5-star reviews we get, the more that the Amazon algorithm will circulate the book amongst the readers who are looking for a great read. And remember, it's a great read, but it's also empowering. You're going to have punch lists on what to do with your kids right now and, all these great things. How to identify, a deep fake and, what to do with the bots and trolls that are phishing you. I mean, there's a lot of helpful right now stuff in there, while it also says, here's where we're going to go. And it'll inspire you, whether you're a user, we're all users of the web, right? Whether you're a user, a creator, a teacher, a techie, in government, whoever you are, a kid, a grown-up, this book is for you. You can email me, Mark, M-A-R-K, at restoretheweb.com. Mark at restoretheweb.com. And my website that Kevin just mentioned is Mark, M-A-R-K, Weinstein, W-E-I-N-S-T-E-I-N, inventor, I-N-V-E-N-T-O-R, markweinsteininventor.com. It's that
Thanks,
straightforward, everybody. And then you could find me on X. I have an X. I don't broadcast a lot there. I just resurrected that just so I can connect with a bunch of my friends that are over there and make sure that they're posting. But there is an X account, Mark Weinstein. But anyway, look around, write to me. Let's get this done, everybody. We got this.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark, for joining us tonight. As I said, one of the best conversations we've had, and I really, really did enjoy it. I'm glad to meet you, glad to have this conversation, learn more, get to read your book, and really dive deeper into that. Everyone, we are the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We invite you to subscribe, to share with your friends so that they can get premium content like we did tonight with Mark, and continue to try to do good. Try to do good in the world of cyber and technology and make a difference. So with that, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm Ashley. I'm an artificially generated avatar with the ability to manipulate your mind via the power of my intelligence botnets. Let me prove it to you. You're about to click on that subscribe button, and then you'll click on the notification bell so you don't miss when Kevin and Jason drop future episodes of the Cyber Distortion Podcast. So, go ahead. That's right. Slide your mouse over slowly and gracefully. There you go. Now click. See, that wasn't so bad now, was it? I'd like to thank you for listening to today's amazing podcast episode on YouTube or your favorite audio streaming platform, and don't forget to tell your friends. Oh, and remain diligent, my cyber friends. The world is a very scary place.